They called us dangerous. So they erased us. Burned our colonies, hunted our explorers, and silenced Earth like it never existed. Now we're back. But we don't come to negotiate. We come wrapped in steel, armed with memory, and guided by the ghosts they created. And when the Empire kneels, we don't offer a hand. We raise the blade. They called it the Rift, an empty scar of space no ship dared cross. No starlight reached it. No signals returned from it. The Empire had designated it a void, charted it as uninhabitable, and moved on. That was their first mistake. The second was thinking humanity had died in silence. Admiral Kalen Voss stood at the edge of the bridge, knuckles white on the rail. The display before him shimmered with incoming data, and yet his eyes locked only on the silhouette forming at the system's edge. No insignia. No hails. No warning. "How many ships?" he asked. The sensor tech swallowed hard. "We can't get an exact count. They're phasing. But more than 10,000, sir. And the mass signature, they're big. Sir, they're massive." Voss said nothing. His throat dried. Behind him, the command staff murmured in hushed tones, but their voices drifted like smoke, meaningless in the roar of panic rising beneath his ribs. "Send a priority Omega alert to Imperial Command. Use my personal cipher. Tag it. Final contingency." The fleet appeared not with a scream, but with silence. They emerged like ink bleeding into water, ships built in void foundries, shaped not by hands but by war itself. Dull, jagged, living. The black arcs of soul. No transmission came. No demand. No statement of war. They didn't need one. The first station died without knowing it had been targeted. An energy bloom shimmered for less than a second before the orbital ring vaporized, taking its 3 million residents with it. No screaming. No alarms. One moment, existence. The next, absence. Across the sector, panic surged. Civilian comms flooded with terrified questions. Emergency jump routes jammed within minutes. And still, the enemy advanced, silent, methodical, inevitable. On board the lead arc, Hell's Grin, Fleet Marshal Lin Tarek watched the devastation unfold, his face carved from stone. Half his jaw was synthetic, the aftermath of a plasma wound decades old. He hadn't replaced it with skin. He wore it exposed, a reminder. His officers didn't ask why. They never had to. Beside him, the AI seraphim flickered into presence, an echo of hundreds of human voices, fused into a choir of dead memory. "We have confirmation," it said. "Subject Kalen Voss is present in system. Would you like to initiate direct contact?" "No," Tarek said. "They don't get words." He stepped forward, tapping in a sequence that authorized orbital correction maneuvers. The dreadnoughts tilted, aligning themselves in a phalanx formation. Behind them, smaller cruisers formed a second wave, engines humming at subliminal readiness. Tarek turned to his second-in-command, Colonel Reese Mara. Her armor still bore scars from the scorched protocol on Hadrian Prime. "They'll call it a massacre," she said. "They're wrong," Tarek replied. "It's a correction." Another station blinked out. This one tried to defend itself, launching fighters, scrambling ion cannons, but it was like throwing sticks at a thunderstorm. The response came from orbit, a concentrated lance of magnetically charged particles that tore the station's hull apart atom by atom. Tarek didn't smile. He hadn't in years. "Do you know what they did to Europa?" he asked her. "I was born after. They sterilized the moons. Said Earth had sent too many colonists. Called it a quarantine violation. They dropped a helium-3 bomb. No survivors. And then they erased the records." Mara nodded slowly. "We're the records now." He touched his comms again, bringing up a visual of Dazratha's planetary defense grid. 28 orbital cannons. 2 Titan-class defense barges. 4 shields overlapped like a spider's nest. "We go through," Tarek said. "They'll offer surrender. They'll offer lies." Back on the Imperial Bridge, Voss watched another fleet blink out. They're not fighting for territory, his advisor said quietly. They're not landing troops. No occupation. Just deletion. Voss stared into the void. He'd once read a classified document about Terrans, before their extermination. Said they were brilliant, volatile, adaptive. Said they didn't fear extinction. Said they changed when threatened. He hadn't believed it. Back then, he thought of them as lesser. Loud. Disorganized. Primitive. But now, the stars themselves seemed to shudder when those ships moved. Open a channel, he said, throat dry. Use everything. Broadcast on all frequencies. Say we plead for ceasefire. Say the Empire recognizes them. Say. The lights dimmed. The feed blinked out. One line of text replaced the screen. You'll be recognized in the ash. Mara blinked at it from her post. Bit theatrical, she muttered. It's not a message, Tarek said. It's a promise. The next wave hit the planetary shield. It held for 11 seconds. Not because it was strong, but because Tarek wanted them to feel it. The Empire had made extermination efficient. Quick. Cold. Humanity would not return that favor. The shields cracked. Atmospheric distortions rippled across Dazratha's skies. Civilians screamed in the streets. Across the palace spires, gold statues of the High Regents toppled, cracking like brittle bones. Still no landing. Tarek didn't want their soil. He wanted their sky. From orbit, they dropped kinetic memory beacons, each one recording the screams of Earth's lost cities, Europa's dying breath, Titan's black sun, and projecting them back onto Imperial comm networks. Every citizen, every soldier, heard it. Heard what the Empire thought had been buried. The cries of children suffocating in domes. The begging of mothers as nanoclouds erased their towns. The final whispered words of a forgotten species. Voss collapsed into his chair. They're ghosts, he whispered. They shouldn't exist. His comms officer turned, tears streaking down his face. They do now. Back on Hell's Grin, Seraphim's chorus dimmed. Awaiting final confirmation. Shall we commence collapse protocol? Tarek considered. His mind wasn't on war anymore. It was on memory. On the faces of those long dead. On the silence the Empire had mistaken for defeat. Not yet, he said. Let them beg. Voss hit the comms himself, his voice trembling. To the Terran fleet, if any of you remember mercy. The screen cut out. Another beacon landed. This one didn't transmit screams. It transmitted the last known image of Earth, burning under orbital fire. Below it, one sentence blinked in blood-red text. Remember US now? The Empire's outer colonies fell in less than 72 hours. No declaration of war. No emissaries. No demands. Just static, then silence. Kalen Voss stood with his command staff in the operations dome of Delphinar Prime as data fed through shaking hands and pale faces. His eyes scanned the latest report, 6 entire systems gone dark. Scouting drones recovered nothing. No debris. No survivors. Not even radiation signatures. Their weapons, said Stratego's alarmed voice low. They don't just kill. They erase. The molecular patterns, it's as if nothing was ever there. Voss didn't blink. What of the refugees? Ilarn shook his head. No one got out. No emergency jumps. They knew exactly where to strike first. Voss's voice dropped to a whisper. Then it begins. The room fell into a sickening hush. Across the stars, humanity moved like a guillotine. Fleet Marshal Lin Tarek led his vanguard in complete silence, his ships whispering through the void like judgment passed in shadow. There were no war drums, only the thunder of ships slicing gravity, phasing in and out of reality like specters. Each strike followed a brutal rhythm. First, communications died. Then, orbital satellites collapsed. Then, the skies turned black, and the cities ceased to exist. Not burning, just not there anymore. Humanity had learned war not from manuals, but from memory. memory of what had been done to them. Tarek reviewed a recorded message captured from an Imperial officer begging for evacuation clearance. The transmission was glitching, garbled with static and fear. "Please, our colony's unarmed. We're a medical facility, damn it!" The human AI parsed it instantly. The voice print matched an officer who had once signed the sterilization order for Io's water colonies. The request was marked irrelevant. The human fleet didn't slow. On board Hell's Grin, Tarek stood with Colonel Mara at the command interface as their target rotated into view, Sector Cradle 6, an Imperial naval nursery. Thousands of young cadets, engineers, and mid-tier command. "Status?" he asked. Mara kept her tone clinical. "No planetary defense grid. Population, 1.3 million. 70% active military." Tarek didn't flinch. "Execute." A swarm of autonomous kinetic drills fell from orbit. They penetrated deep before detonating silently, releasing vibrational charges that liquefied steel and bone. The screams were brief, trapped beneath collapsed hulls and vaporized terrain. The Empire tried to strike back. They deployed Sentinel-class battle carriers from Corps Command, ships the size of small moons, bristling with plasma artillery and hyper-shielding. The kind of fleet that crushed rebellions with a single formation. But humanity didn't fight fair. They didn't meet them head-on. They lured them. Tarek dispatched a false distress signal from an abandoned mining system. When the Sentinels arrived, they found empty rocks, and then the mines went critical. Detonations carved through the asteroid belt, collapsing it into a storm of hyper-accelerated fragments that tore through the Sentinels' outer hulls. Before they could recover, human warships emerged from behind a dwarf planet, engines cold, already locked. Every beam, every missile, every charge hit exactly where the enemy was weakest. Within 17 minutes, the might of Corps Command was space debris. Mara turned to him. "We're still not hearing from them. They're hoping we'll talk," Tarek said. "Hope is the last defense of guilty men." The Empire's High Council grew frantic. Messages flooded every channel. "We offer reparations. We seek peaceful negotiation. We did what was necessary at the time." Every plea was archived, filed, and ignored. The past didn't negotiate. Tarek opened a private relay to Seraphim. The AI responded with a hum that echoed like breathless wind. "Status of Empire's last fallback grid? Located. Mobilizing. Initiating Operation Thorn Harvest." The voice was still layered in the whispers of the dead, thousands of lost Terrans speaking through synthetic calm. Tarek paused. "Make them feel this." The Empire's attempt at psychological warfare came next. Broadcasts across sectors showed children, elderly civilians, wounded soldiers pleading for mercy, eyes wide and trembling. Tarek watched them all without emotion. Then he sent his own message back. Not video. Not speech. Just a file. 10 seconds long. It was the sound of Earth's atmosphere breaking as the Empire's purge ships descended. Then a girl's voice, young, no older than 6, whispering a single name before the static swallowed her. That file was broadcast on loop for 3 straight days on every Imperial frequency. Entire populations screamed for it to stop. But no one could stop it. The human fleet advanced again. They hit the Fortress Arc, the Empire's last defense wall before the core systems. It was legendary. Layers of defense satellites, minefields, battle stations stacked across 1,000 kilometers. Humanity bypassed it entirely. Using gravity shear tunneling, a forbidden science the Empire once banned as unstable, Tarek's ships slipped through folds in space and appeared behind the wall. The Empire barely had time to register their presence before its entire supply corridor went dark. The Fortress Arc collapsed from the inside. Its own fuel reserves exploded. Tarek watched the lights blink out on the sector map. One by one. He didn't speak. Mara finally asked the question no one else would. "Do you ever think we've gone too far?" His gaze stayed locked on the screen. "Did they?" She said nothing. Because she knew the answer. They reached the edge of the capital systems. The last breath of the Empire. One message came through. This one wasn't filtered. It was live. Voss appeared, hollow, gaunt, sweating under command lights. "We surrender," he said. "We beg mercy. No more blood." Tarek didn't answer. He turned, gave the signal. "Activate Judgment Vector. Let them see it coming." From the heart of the fleet, a single device was launched, slim, unassuming, elegant in its design. The Judgment Vector carried no explosives. No shockwave. Just light. When it detonated in orbit, it painted the sky with images, every record, every memory of what the Empire had done. Projected like ghosts over their cities. Children walking to school before being incinerated. Colonists watching the sky tear open. Families screaming in vacuum as domes cracked. And the final image, Earth. Its oceans boiling. Its surface charred black. And in bold red script across the sky, visible to every capital world below. "We remember." Tarek closed the channel. "Prepare the next wave." No one objected. The lights inside Hell's Grin pulsed with quiet rhythm, the glow soft and almost reverent. Tarek watched the Empire's Pleon repeat, his eyes unmoving. Voss's voice cracked halfway through, not from grief, but from exhaustion. He was pleading now, not with words, but with his posture. Shoulders bent. Eyes sunken. Hands clenched in silent panic behind a desk meant for declarations of dominance. Tarek didn't feel satisfaction. Just certainty. This was the moment he'd spent a lifetime preparing for. His voice was calm when he spoke to the bridge. "Has the beacon reached them?" "It's been deployed," Mara replied. "Every citizen in the capital just watched the end of Europa. The screams, the ash." Tarek nodded once. "They'll try to deny it. They already are." The AI Seraphim appeared, its voice now reduced to a single speaker, female, ageless, heavy with restrained rage. 92% of core system civilians never knew. The footage is triggering riots across 24 cities. High Chancellor Redhen has resigned. 2 others are dead. Suicide or sabotage. "Good," Tarek said. "Keep the truth feeding. Don't let them look away." He stepped forward, activating a private feed. The screen shimmered, and a pale, bald man in a silver robe came into view. Eyes sharp, voice clipped. "You've made your point. This is vengeance, not justice." Tarek said nothing. The man's tone sharpened. "What exactly do you want? You've burned our border worlds, collapsed our fleets, crippled our systems. Is this enough blood?" Tarek's voice was ice. "You know my name?" "Yes." "Then you know what they did to my mother." Silence. "She was aboard Outpost 14, Europa's med lab. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a threat. She was in labor." Tarek leaned closer. "They left her to die in vacuum. They watched her claw at the bulkhead. They logged it as protocol efficiency. You can't hold the living accountable for the sins of the dead." Tarek's face didn't move. "You've been alive a long time, Minister. You sat on that council when they purged us. That decision was complex." "No," he said. "It was cowardice dressed in science." He cut the feed. Behind him, Mara exhaled slowly. "He was the last one." "Not yet," Tarek said. "We have one more." A data panel lit up, showing the locked coordinates for Argent Vault, an off-record moon, once thought myth. Empire denials had lasted centuries. But Seraphim had found it. Deep under coded relay chains and classified jump routes. Tarek stared at the hollow blinking dot. "Ready the strike team." 10 hours later, Tarek descended into Argent's surface, clad in Eurocombat mesh, flanked by the Red Echoes, elite operators grown in battle vats, trained in orbital simulators that ran death cycles on repeat until fear was irrelevant. They moved like shadows, each breath in sync, weapons as extensions of muscle memory. They breached the inner chamber without resistance. The room was sterile. Bright. Wrong. Rows of cryochambers lined the walls, and in them floated men and women Tarek recognized from fragmented footage, aged barely a day. High Empire officials from centuries past. The architects of annihilation, sleeping soundly while the galaxy turned. He approached one. Read the tag. Admiral Revectorin. Designation, Cleansing Authority, Sole Incident. Mara stepped beside him. What now? Tarek didn't speak. He simply reached forward and deactivated the cryochamber. Torin's eyes opened slowly, disoriented. Then focused. Recognition hit like a hammer. You! Tarek's voice was colder than vacuum. You were the one who signed the atmosphere filtration lockout. Torin licked his lips, pale and trembling. We were told humans were unstable. You were accelerating too quickly. You'd destabilize galactic order. And your solution was sterilization? We thought you'd recover. Tarek took a step closer. You thought we'd vanish. Torin's face shifted from guilt to calculation. But you're here. You've returned. That must mean you were spared. A remnant. A rogue cell. We weren't spared, Tarek said. We rebuilt. On the bones of planets you didn't even bother to finish killing. We rewrote physics. We outgrew our gods. And we remembered. You could do so much more. You could lead now. Rebuild. Not destroy. Tarek looked around the room. You went to sleep thinking you'd returned to a galaxy that still feared you. We are the architects of peace. No, Tarek snapped. You're parasites in stasis. And I'm the cure. He turned to Seraphim. Disengage life support across all chambers. Slowly. Let them feel the freeze. Mara watched, expression unreadable, as the lights above each pod began to flicker, one by one. The AI's voice hummed in the air. Vital signs dropping. Cortical awareness active. They know they're dying. Good, Tarek said. Let it be the last thing they remember. Back aboard Hellsgrin, he stood at the command console, watching as systems across the galaxy lit up in rebellion. The truth had spread faster than any weapon. When the Empire had silenced humanity, they'd created something more dangerous than enemies. They created witnesses with purpose. Across liberated systems, old Imperial statues were torn down. Flags burned. Citizens chanted names they'd never heard before: Terra, Europa, Titan, not as myths, but as martyrdom. Mara approached him quietly. They're calling it the Reckoning. Tarek shook his head. No. Reckoning implies guilt. This, he gestured to the stars. This is balance. She waited a moment, then asked what she hadn't since the beginning. What happens when there's no one left to burn? Tarek finally smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Then we make sure they never forget the warmth. They've broken the last barrier. Kalen Voss heard the words, but they felt distant. His advisors murmured behind him, but his mind was quiet, as if suspended in the moment before collapse. The fortress arc was gone. Their final defense line. The fleet that once spanned a third of the galaxy now reduced to sensor blips and dying pings. He turned slowly, scanning the table. Everyone present was older than the war, but none of them looked it now. Faces pale. Mouths dry. Nobody dared make eye contact. How many worlds remain? A comms officer, barely old enough to hold his rank, cleared his throat. 3 habitable planets. 5 artificial habitats. All in central orbit. But citizens are evacuating. They've seen the footage, sir. They're abandoning military posts. They don't believe we'll survive. Will we? No one answered. Voss didn't expect one. On board Hellsgrin, Tarek studied the capital systems through a translucent interface. Civilian transports were fleeing in every direction, scattering like ants from a flooded nest. Interception protocols had already tagged 24 escape vectors. He didn't order them destroyed. Yet. Mara stood beside him, reviewing a digital feed. They're pulling all ground forces to Dazrith Prime. They've shut down regional defenses. Looks like they're gambling everything on the capital. They're not gambling, Tarek said. They're desperate. She hesitated. We could end this here. Disable orbital control. Broadcast our message. Take the high ground. He looked at her, calm but direct. They took the high ground from us when they melted Earth's poles. She didn't respond. Seraphim's voice cut in. Judgment Vector is in position. Orders? Not yet, Tarek said. I want Voss to watch what he created collapse from the inside. Mara watched him carefully. You're going to talk to him. Tarek nodded once. One time. For history. A single encrypted channel was opened. Across the void, in a crumbling palace tower above Dazratha's core, Kalen Voss stood alone as Tarek's image appeared. Not as a soldier. Not in armor. Just a face. Quiet. Measured. Voss straightened. You've made your point. I'm not done. Voss tried to keep his voice steady. You've destroyed fleets. Cities. Cultures. I've seen your broadcasts. I've seen the memorials carved in orbit around the ruins you made. Is that supposed to be justice? Tarek didn't blink. Justice would have been us standing before your tribunals 3 centuries ago. This is just the invoice. You're dragging innocents into a war they didn't start. No one's innocent when they inherit the spoils of genocide. They didn't know. They didn't care. Voss exhaled slowly. I knew. Tarek's voice darkened. I remember your signature on the cleansing order for the Soul Cluster. I remember the postscript, efficient and unfortunate, but required for galactic stability. I was young. I believed the committee. I didn't know what we'd become. You didn't care what we were, Tarek said. That was always your problem. You looked at us and saw contamination. Not competition. There was a long pause. What do you want? Voss finally asked. Tarek tilted his head slightly. Truth. Then take it. Take my confession. Take the Empire's failure. Take your vengeance and go. Tarek's expression didn't change. We're not here for vengeance. We're here to make sure this never happens again. And if fear is the only language you speak, then we'll become your goddamned mythology. He ended the call. Voss stood alone in the silence, watching his capital's lights dim one sector at a time. It wasn't a war anymore. It was a reckoning. On Hell's Grin, the command console lit up. Confirmation. Imperial Command had broadcast a full planetary surrender. Civilians in the core zones were now streaming into the streets, carrying white flags. Scared. Hopeless. Mara turned to Tarek. Orders? He looked at the display. He thought of his mother's last breath on Europa. His father's hands bloody from trying to break open an airlock. The names of friends erased from history. He thought of the silence they'd left behind. And then he thought of the children now kneeling on burning streets, asking questions no one could answer. He took a breath. Drop the vector. Mara's eyes widened. They surrendered. They surrendered to save themselves. Not to acknowledge what they did. Not to teach their children. They would bury this again tomorrow if we walked away tonight. But no death, he said. This time, just memory. Seraphim confirmed activation. The judgment vector fell from orbit in absolute silence. Over the capital, the sky tore open. But instead of fire, came light. Not destructive, reflective. A holographic array, engineered from refracted stellar radiation, covered the planet. Images streamed from every direction. Earth's final moments. Titan's failed evacuation. Ganymede's mass graves. Faces. Names. Screams. Static. Over and over. Across every screen, wall, window, truth rendered undeniable. People wept. Some screamed. A few dropped to their knees. But none could look away. In the command center, Tarek watched as the feed looped for the 1000th time. He didn't feel satisfaction. Only silence. Then Seraphim spoke again. High Chancellor Rethen has just signed a public dissolution order for the Empire. The Council has been disbanded. All remaining governors have fled or surrendered. Mara didn't move. They're gone, she said. They should be, Tarek replied. They were never built to last. Only to lie. She stepped forward, quieter now. We won. No, he said. We remembered. That's enough. He walked away from the screen, from the war, from the weight of 3 centuries. Somewhere deep in the void, the past had finally stopped screaming. The ash hadn't settled, but the war was over. Not with a final explosion. Not with a cheer. Just the quiet of systems shutting down, one by one. Silence wasn't peace, it was proof that nothing else was left to say. Tarek stood alone in the dim light of the command deck. Around him, the bridge was quiet. No orders. No alerts. Just waiting. Mara joined him without a word, eyes hollow but steady. We're receiving confirmation from the last sector. Dazrath has stood down. Civilian leadership has assumed provisional control under our oversight directive. He nodded. And the fleet? Holding formation. No resistance. Not even attempts to flee. They're not running. They're just watching. They should watch. He stepped closer to the central console, fingers tracing the glowing edge. Let them remember who we became. And why. Seraphim's voice came in softly. All Empire communication networks have been reprogrammed. The historical files have been locked. Tamper-proof. Unalterable. Every system from here to the far cradle will now carry the full record of the Terran genocide, encoded in their planetary archives. Tarek didn't smile. He didn't speak for a long time. When he did, it came out flat. Good. The past had been erased for so long. For generations, humans had lived in exile, unnamed, forgotten by design. But the Empire's attempt to delete a species had failed, not because of mercy or mistake, but because humans had refused to stay dead. Mara leaned against the console, arms crossed. We built our entire civilization on the edge of extinction. Do we even know who we are without them now? He looked at her. We were never defined by them. They just forced us to remember what mattered. Which was? Each other. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She'd served with him since the first storm fleets. She'd watched their people crawl out of dead moons, rebuild lost languages, weld warships from broken satellites. Humanity hadn't just survived, it had hardened. A transmission request came in. From the new provisional leadership on Dazrath. Civilian faces. No uniforms. No pretense. Tarek accepted it. A middle-aged woman, hair graying at the temples, spoke carefully. Fleet Marshal Tarek. I am Kivarin. I've been appointed interim planetary administrator. We understand the war is over. It is. We've seen the broadcast loops. We've read the records. We've reviewed the tribunal documentation your AI transmitted. The genetic maps. The orders. All of it. Then you understand why we came. She paused. Yes. We do. Tarek studied her face. She wasn't afraid. Just tired. The kind of tired that only comes when denial is no longer possible. She continued quieter. There are children here. Millions of them. Born long after the wars. Raised in lies. They'll grow up carrying this history now. And if we don't do something better with it, they'll become what we were. He didn't look away. We didn't come here to rule. We came here to break the cycle. Then help us, she said. Not with fire. With presence. With knowledge. With truth. Tarek gave the slightest nod. We'll leave a relay fleet. Not armed. Not to police. To witness. To teach. Her shoulders dropped slightly, relief barely visible. We'll accept that. The feed cut out. Tarek didn't speak. Behind him, Mara breathed out. Just like that? No, he said. Not just like that. We paid for this with everything. He walked to the edge of the deck, looking out into the void beyond. The stars burned cold and distant. For a long time, they had meant nothing. Now, maybe, they were something again. Seraphim spoke once more. Would you like to issue a final declaration? Tarek thought for a long time, then nodded. Seraphim's signal amplified, carrying across every surviving Imperial frequency, every civilian line, every remaining sensor relay. When he spoke, his voice was clear. Not booming. Not angry. Just full. This is Fleet Marshal Lin Tarek of the Terran Vanguard. The war is over. There will be no occupation. No new empire. We did not fight to conquer. We fought to be remembered. He paused. Let the weight settle. For 3 centuries, your histories rode us out. Called us lost. Called us failed. But the truth doesn't vanish. It waits. It roots itself deep. And one day it returns. We are that truth. Not perfect. Not proud. Just unbroken. Another pause. We remember the names you erased. We carry them forward. And now, so will you. Let that be the price of peace. He ended the transmission. Nothing more needed saying. Mara stepped beside him again. What now? Tarek's gaze didn't move. Now we go home. She hesitated. Do we have one? We do now. He turned and walked away. The ship didn't shift course. It simply held. The stars ahead no longer looked like a battlefield. Just space. Cold. Open. Waiting. And behind them, across 1,000 worlds, the stories of the dead began to speak again. Not in vengeance. Not in anger. But in memory. And memory never fades.